Welcome back, ladies and gents, to the podcast. My name is Curtis, and thank you very much for joining us today, where we are discussing all of Renfrewshire's businesses, local in the area and the surrounding areas. And today we have a fantastic new business that I'm looking forward to discussing. Welcome, Tracey. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm good, thank you.
How are you? You all right?
I'm very well. A tad nervous, but I'm well.
Perfect. That is absolutely great. I'm delighted to have you. So, first of all, let's do some introductions with yourself. So, do you want to even tell us who you are?
So I'm Tracey. I'm local to Renfrew, and I run a counselling, coaching, and training business called One of a Kind. And I set up about a year ago in the same office as your good self, which is lovely, a lovely community. And yeah, I love it. I really enjoy what I do, and I hope that I get to expand on some of the information that I want to get across to you, and that I portray the service that I offer well and articulately. I suppose that's my thing that's making me nervous.
Oh, you don't have to be nervous. I'm sure you'll be absolutely fine. Just forget that the cameras are on and that we're being recorded at the moment. You'll be absolutely fine. You're a natural speaker. We sat and chatted for about 15, 20 minutes beforehand. So you honestly have nothing to worry about. This is what the podcast is all about. It's finding out who you are and what your business is all about and how we can get the people of Renfrewshire and I say the surrounding areas to you to use your service. So how did you decide that you, or even why did you decide that you wanted to become a counsellor?
I've always had, I've always been fascinated by people, from people watching to like learning about people and the psychology of people. I underwent, for want of a better term, therapy myself a few years back and absolutely loved it. It was very much a problem solving type situation that I had, and the opportunity to explore a problem with someone else who just listened and was able to give a bit of guidance was just really freeing for me. I found it really, really helpful. And if I'm honest, I'd been thinking about it on and off for probably about 10 years, like thinking, I think I would like to be a therapist. And I eventually took the leap and enrolled on a course that's a prerequisite for counselling. And I did that with Strathclyde Uni. And then the pandemic started. So a lot of the training was...
so funny, because like the amount of businesses that we've had on so far, everybody has been affected in one way by another.
Yeah, it's obviously it's such a huge impact. And yeah, it was a huge change because everything went online, and within my job at the time, everything went online, and it was such a crazy rush to get to online. And I still do online work as part of my therapy, but I quite like to see people in real life, to be perfectly honest with you. So yeah, I really enjoyed therapy, really felt I got something from it, felt that it would be something that I could do and that I could be of benefit to people. So yeah, I decided to do the studying and the training for it, and that's 3 years, the duration of the study, or studying, and I've come out the other end, and a therapist. I can put my therapist badge on now.
So when you studied, was that college? Was that university?
It was with a private training provider. So it was with a company called Glasgow Counselling Alcohol, and they were able to offer the diploma. And yeah, the content is basically the same across, training providers. Kind of, yeah. I mean, they can deviate a wee bit, but it's mostly the same. And yeah, it was an interesting experience, an interesting experience.
Well, we've met up beforehand. When we had this meeting within the Startup Street. We got a chance to meet all the different, because there's loads of different businesses in here, and it was interesting hearing your story then, just as it's even more interesting now hearing it. So your service that you offer, is there a certain bracket of people that you offer it to? So is it adults, or do you work with kids? Do you do like kind of group sessions, or do you go into businesses and things? Because I know that's quite a popular thing at the moment, especially like, having the team mentality and things. They tend to hire in people that would come in and run kind of workshops and things. So what's your kind of bracket that you're working at the minute as such?
So I within this office set up, or within my therapy room, I would work with individual people, usually adults, maybe someone who was late teens potentially, but it's mostly adults that I would work with. I also offer couples counselling, so therefore there would be 2 people typically in the room with me. During my training, I also studied coaching with the Institute of Management. So I also offer coaching, life coaching. I don't particularly love that term, but life coaching and business coaching, just because I have a long background of working within community education and community development. So I did the training for that, and actually it's very, very similar to counselling. It's really on a spectrum alongside counselling, to be honest with you. So there's not huge differentials. I do that here. I can do that within a workplace as well, potentially. And my background is training. So I offer mental health and wellbeing workshops or training. They've predominantly been death, loss, bereavement related. And I do some work for some local authorities. It's been online. I'm just about to do some in face-to-face in real life.
Okay.
And they are around making your working environment a bereavement-friendly working environment, for example, or the language to use when dealing with bereavement or working with someone who's bereaved, because sometimes that can be a wee bit scary. And sometimes we think, I don't know what to say, so I'm not going to say anything. And actually that can be really painful for the person
definitely.
that's on the receiving end of that. We, as you know, have a beautiful setup here that we've got a meeting room that we can use, so we can have small numbers of people here for training and workshops, or I can go to people's workplace to deliver that. And the numbers don't really the numbers vary, obviously, that it's not, we can do small
Depends
numbers
on size
here
of company and things.
absolutely. But whether there's 5 people in a room or 50 people in a room, as long as everyone is willing to participate and wants to get involved, then it's straightforward. The delivery doesn't change, to be honest with you. So yeah, that's the kind of 3 arms.
I think that's brilliant, and the fact that you're not just in that one box, you're more than open to do it, and I think all businesses could benefit from this. I mean, increasing staff morale, I mean, everything that goes along with it, especially mental health these days. I think you've definitely got a good opportunity there to work with a lot of organisations, and later on in the podcast, we'll find out how we can get in touch with you as well, so that people can, after this, if they've listened to it, they can also get in touch. So do you have any therapy specialisms?
To a degree, yes. I probably wouldn't use the term specialism, if I'm honest, because I'm a bit feared to use the
Sorry,
term.
my bad.
No, that's okay. It's a lovely term. I'm just a bit feared in case anyone thinks that I would know absolutely everything about the subject. But I've, just because of the nature of the work that I've done, for context, when you're doing a counselling diploma, you do 100 hours of placement. And my placement was with a, can I say the charity name? Is that okay?
Of course you can, yeah.
It was with...
this is all about you growing, and if you've got businesses that have helped you along the way, or you've got shout-outs and things, you can certainly, to your heart's content.
Okay. So I did my placement with a really wonderful organisation called FAMS, so Families Affected by Murder and Suicide, and they're based in Lanarkshire. So I did my 100 hours, more than 100 hours, but did my kind of prerequisite 100 hours there. And I kind of diverted into loss, bereavement, death, just by virtue of the placement that I did. And it was just for me, it felt like such worthwhile work, really worthwhile work, because these families just needed a place and a space to be able to chat about their loss. From that, I started to do work with Cruise Bereavement. So they're a national charity, but there's Cruise Bereavement in Scotland. And I do lots of work with them, from training their staff through to training on contracts that they have. So yeah, I've ended up being in the realm of death, loss and bereavement. And much as that sounds really strange, I really enjoy it. I enjoy the opportunity to normalise the language and to allow people to feel comfortable to grieve within the space that we're in. Sometimes people maybe need a wee bit of permission almost to feel
upset, and to express themselves, and 100%,
it's a huge thing,
because it affects everyone.
Yes,
it affects everyone, and and it will always affect everyone. It's a topic that is always constantly people don't want to speak about, and not coming with the idea of what it is to it, and people maybe don't want to come and do the whole therapy sessions and things because they just feel like they're just maybe being a burden on someone. So
Totally.
definitely a great subject to be a part of, I would say. So do you say you have someone coming to you for the first time? Do you have a clinical kind of process that you would go through, or would you do an assessment with them?
Yes, so I offer a free 20-minute consultation. That can be on the phone, it can be online. You know, most people have chosen to do a telephone call. Some people want to do online. I think because there's something comforting in seeing you as a human being and a real life person rather than just a face on a tiny picture on Instagram. So yeah, I offer that 20-minute consultation and I make sure that the client is in a position that they feel safe enough to discuss what's happening for them, or potential client to know that they're safe enough to discuss what's happening for them. And for me, the responsible thing is to understand if what that person is likely to be bringing is within my scope of competence, basically. And if it's not within my scope of competence, then I would look to refer to them. I've thankfully not been in a position where I've had to refer a potential client onto another therapist, but I absolutely would if I felt it wasn't within my range of what I can work with, basically. So yeah, that would happen, and then if and when the client chooses to come in for their first appointment, we would do an initial assessment around what's really going on for them, and further exploration of what's been happening for them, because sometimes someone won't want to tell you that information over the telephone. They'll just give you a brief outline, and they'll expand on that within the first session. And then in theory it's straightforward to then offer that person a suggested timeline that we might work to, and the tools and techniques tools and techniques that we would use in terms of the work that we would do. But there's definitely a responsibility for that client, because they do a lot of the work. I'm there as a receptacle for information and to reflect back on what's happening, and maybe do what we would call psychoeducation, to explain why someone might be feeling why they're feeling. But I also have to remember that I'm 1 hour a week of that person's life.
Yes.
And that's really important, because that person will often say, you've done so much, or you said that I should, but actually you're just empowering that person to do what they feel is right for them, basically. And that's where the power in the relationship is that I'm empowering them to do what is right for them, basically, and to take the path that they feel is right for them.
I love that, because it's not about just getting the answers and getting them quickly. It's changing their lifestyle and how they have an outlook on their life as well. And that's when I feel like counselling is really, really important. I've also been through counselling myself. Something really bad mental health a couple of years ago, and I worked with a charity. I believe it was called Ben at the time, and it was a gentleman called Des. And I've never did anything like that before in my life.
Really?
But it was so nice just to have somebody there that didn't force me to believe anything or forced me to do anything. It was all about, how can I find my way of getting myself back to normality is not the right words, but to get myself in a better place. And I think that was a big, massive thing. And I would, as I say, if you've ever considered counselling, then I would look into it, first of all. I think it has something beneficial for everybody out there, regardless of what you're going through and what your circumstances are. So, like that, you were saying about bringing in clients and things, and you were saying about on the phone how they maybe don't give you the full information, and you might find that when you have them in person.
Yes.
So how do you handle that, like those that are maybe reluctant to open up to you? How do you kind of go around that?
I have my ethos is to go kindly. That will always be my default, to be honest with you, because I think that often when we feel lost, we struggle to find the kindness in the world, I think is maybe probably how I would articulate it. That's not necessarily how everyone else feels, but it's certainly at times where I've maybe felt that life isn't treating me particularly well, I'm seeking out the kindness. And I suppose I'm trying to be that person to anyone who comes to see me basically, or chooses to spend time within the, you know, my therapy space, whether that be for training or whether it's for counselling. There's no real silver bullet, to be perfectly honest with you. I can't force someone to share with me. But typically what I find is that if the person is sitting in front of me, they've made a conscious decision. They've contemplated that they want to make a change.
Yep.
And by actually picking up that phone or sending an email, which is hugely courageous when you're maybe not feeling in the best place, it's hugely courageous. They're usually sitting on my couch because they want change of some description. And typically I find that session one, a person will want to tell their story. They're keen to tell their story. They're keen for me to understand where they're coming from. And I am more than happy to listen to their story. That's one of the huge learnings that I definitely got from placement on FAMS. Listen to their story, and someone having, you know this, or I'm guessing you've experienced this, someone just listening and having no expectations of you, not interjecting the way a friend or a family would to say, do you know what you should do? Or do you know what I would do?
Yeah.
Because that's
or
not what
listen,
you need.
like it's all in your head, or
Absolutely.
anything like that.
Yes. You need to stop thinking like that, or you need to need. It's just such a negative thing, isn't it? When you're in not a great place, you know, or when you're
100%.
experiencing loss, you know, or you're bereaved and you're feeling low. It's not particularly helpful to hear any of those things. And as a therapist, we don't do that. You know, there's not any of those suggestions, or typically there's not those suggestions. So I generally find giving someone that space, they will share and unburden themselves to quite a degree. And I'll often find second session, we maybe go deeper and there's actually more information given and more context given to what's happening, because an hour is no time. It goes by in the blink of an eye.
No, it doesn't.
It really isn't it?
You probably listen to this podcast and you'll be like, I can't believe how quick this has went.
And you know, this 50 minutes is just, it goes by so quickly. And you can't condense your world down into 50 minutes. You just, you know, you can condense it into lots of 50 minutes, and, you know, if you want to share, but you can't unpack everything necessarily in that first session. So it does take a wee bit of time.
It's a journey.
100%, yes. And it's sometimes a bit of a, what do you say, one step forward, two steps back type of setup, you know, just because you're
kind of opening a door. It's like a messy room. You open up a door and you start to pick everything up, but there's actually more things underneath it, and you dig in so much deeper. And as you say, you just kind of go into it. But it's for me, it's when it was my journey, it was going underneath and seeing what the main, like, I had something in the back of my head that I was going, this is the problem. This is what the problem is and stuff. But when you actually dug underneath, there was more to it as such. And I think if you don't acknowledge the other things that are going around that are making you unhappy and affecting your mental health and things, then how can you expect the one thing that you think it is to become better? Yeah,
1,000,000%. It's such a great analogy. As you say, you're kind of rummaging about and you're kind of uncovering, and do I look at that? Oh, I don't know if I'm ready yet. You know, like, do I put that away just now? And you often find that it's a myriad of things, you know, and it's definitely one of those things of, big learning for me was anger is usually pain. It's usually something entirely different. You know, we call it this badge, and it's not socially acceptable to be angry anymore for whatever reason. Whereas I love a good fit of anger, to be perfectly honest with you. I think it's quite healthy.
It's nothing better than just having like a proper scream into a pillow, or, you know what I mean, or just having one of those big moments where you go,
totally. Yeah, as long as everyone else
around, it's what you're feeling. It's what your body's obviously trying to, and I see it as your body's trying to get that out. It's trying to get rid of it.
Absolutely. You're so wise. I love this. You're so wise. And you're absolutely right.
I've been around the block times.
I love it. Yeah, it's healthy. I agree.
And I think that is it, and it's embracing all of these, like your feelings and your thoughts, and working on becoming a how to manage it, and how to better it as well, and come out that other end of being stronger. I think as well, because you know what I mean. I feel like it's one of the things that never leaves you, but it's how you control it and how you manage it. And I think a lot of the times, because this kind of leads me on to my next point, is, say you do have your sessions and things with you, but you may find that there's certain points that will trigger certain moments.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be, how would you manage that with someone? Don't know what you would call them. Would you call them a client? Is that what you would call them?
Let's say client. Yeah,
client. So like, how would you deal with a client? Say that you're digging in deep,
yes.
and then something triggers at that point. How would you manage that?
So, depending on the circumstances, if they felt triggered or activated, it just depends on whatever term you want to use. If they were experiencing an extreme response or extreme emotion in relation to something that they'd discussed, in the very first instance, usually a grounding technique. So feeling your bum in the seat, feeling your feet on the floor, bringing yourself back to the present, you're safe here, those sorts of things, reassurances. And really seeking that client's permission to say, do we want to continue down this road? As a therapist, I feel responsible for you and for your safety in the room.
Yep.
And if it's triggered, if this word or situation or, whatever has triggered a response within you, it probably deserves some attention from you. But reassurances that you don't have to do that right this minute, and you don't have to process that all right this minute, whilst being mindful that in X amount of minutes time they have to leave, or they're leaving the room and the space, and
won't see them for however long the next period or the next session is.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's about making them safe is typically the thing, and the kindness is tied up in that. And I think I referenced earlier about psychoeducation. So understanding that, maybe it is that analogy, the anger that you're feeling is potentially pain. Let's examine it as something different. Let's put a different badge on it. And giving a client some understanding of where that feeling may have come from and why they may be experiencing that feeling. Not being a fortune teller, but just that stereotypical thing of, history tells us or data tells us this feeling actually might be another feeling. And I like to give some version of a technique to use further down the line, so that there's something leaving the room that feels like safety for them, basically.
Would they be kind of breathing techniques and things like that?
It could be reading, for example, as well. If that person says, I love to do research or I love to read, a suggestion of a book that might be of interest. I keep books in the office so that if anyone wants to borrow one, they're more than welcome to. And I had a real conflict around it because perception's a huge thing for me. So I was worried that this library of books would look like I was one of these people that's look at how many books I've read in it. Those worries
you can tell the type of books you have, and you're like, it's fancy pants.
Yeah, and I was like, I've only read half of them. Face up.
You'd probably have the smart books, whereas mine would be anime, Harry Potter, probably comic books there. So they'd probably look at me and go, yeah, we'll not touch anything. Probably not my jam.
All rich tapestry in the world, doesn't it?
We all like different things.
Absolutely.
We all like different things. So, and you can be as honest as you want. Do you find the job challenging?
Yeah. I was speaking to someone recently, I can't think who, and I was saying to them, in terms of the full job, I was saying to them, I know that I am a counsellor and that I have a certificate. I don't have a badge. I'm joking about the badge, but I have a certificate that says, I've done what I need to do. Someone
we can make you up a lanyard. Totally, that's fine.
Might need to now. There's no shiny star on it.
It's one of those first aid ones. It's I am a counsellor. Sorted.
I can wear my badge with pride. So, I have a certificate that says I can do it. I've got a long history of work and life experience. I know these things, and I've got a certificate for coaching. Those things I can do, being in the room with a person and offering them me and offering them the learning that I have and the experience that I have, I can do. I love to do. For me, the hard part is, it's a typical thing within counselling, is feeling good enough, feeling equipped enough, feeling knowledgeable enough, because there are so many areas that people want to speak about within a therapy setting, and there is only so much life experience one person can have, and there's only so much reading
you'll never know what somebody comes out with.
No, this is the thing. And going back to what we said, around that initial phone call, someone will share so much that they feel safe to share, and then they may share more further down the line. And it's really just about always sense checking that. CPD, so continuing professional development, is a huge thing within the field of counselling. And I look to maintain that regularly. I'm always pushing a pram out with of being in this office, so I usually have to listen to a book rather than read a book. So it's the listening part, which is
good. So modern. So modern,
isn't it? It's a great problem solving technique for being able to read, because I quite like to immerse myself in a book. But actually, I don't know about you, but the challenging part is the running the business part, like just knowing all of the stuff that you need to know, because my course didn't teach me any of that. My course didn't teach me how to run a business.
Massively, yeah, I completely agree. So I didn't necessarily go anywhere to study or do anything. Yeah. This was that for me. The podcast and the studio came about because I started the podcast during lockdown, and it was literally the basic of the basic.
Okay.
Did it through Teams and Zoom, and then was taking recordings and things like that. And I've always had a background in that kind of thing,
Okay.
but this is what passion then struck, and I started doing research and things, because what else could you do during lockdown? Yeah. You couldn't go anywhere.
They'll bake banana loaf and walk. That was about the height of it, wasn't it?
I was just eating banana loaf or just eating. That's all. Didn't walk. If anything, it was just that outside. Nope, too cold. But this is it. Nobody's taught me how to run a business as well, and how you market your business. I think that's the biggest thing, and how you. Could you still have to convince those to come and use? Now, you would expect counsellor, you put that out there, and everybody would be like, "Oh, I need a counsellor." Perfect.
Yeah.
It's not as easy as that. No. It's not as easy, and as you say, it's hard to market it as such. So, is that been a struggle at the moment, do you think, with the business? And you know what I mean? Because it's hard enough trying to convince someone to use a counsellor. Definitely. Nobody.
Absolutely.
There's people out there that won't admit to needing a counsellor or needing help.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like that. So how see somebody just off the blue and you try and convince them as such to counsellor? Is there a way you would maybe go about doing that? I know that question probably sounds a bit like maybe difficult, and I've maybe worded it wrong, but
okay.
just like, or kind of how would you put the business out there? Like, if you get a goal, like, so what's your goal as a counsellor?
My goal as a counsellor is to equip as many people as possible that cross my path, whether that's through training, and workshops, or whether that's through one-to-one counselling, or obviously couples counselling, to equip people to feel empowered. Really, I feel that's such an important thing, because power and control, I think, are big factors in our life, and when we feel out of control, we can feel a bit powerless. And for me, giving that power back to that person, whether that's to feel equipped enough to leave the house every day, or whether that's to make a huge leap in their business world, or equip themselves and understand the right terminology to use when it comes to mental health or well-being. My best hope is that everyone that I encounter walks away with something positive. They walk away with something that they can, positive's maybe the wrong term, they can walk away with something that helps them to feel equipped, or better equipped, to deal with whatever their situation is, basically. That's my best hope.
And I think like that, like with this, I would hope that it would open up people's minds to obviously getting a counsellor, knowing that there's someone like this in the area as well. As you say, you've got a lovely facility. Your room is absolutely stunning. Yeah. It's so nice and peaceful and relaxing. And I think for, people, we all have a really stressful life now, especially with things going on. You know what I mean? There's constant bad news, you know what I mean, in the world, and everything that goes around. So everybody has the total right to be, mental health deteriorated. So I think like this, I hope that the podcast has done, if you are listening and you're watching on whatever platform it is, that this would open your mind to doing it. And certainly, advertising, yourself and everything that goes on with counselling. Yeah. So just to obviously ask you about a psychotherapist.
Yes.
So I've seen this as one of your taglines.
Yes.
What is that?
So, my diploma was Diploma in Integrative Counselling and Psychotherapy. And really, for me, counselling and psychotherapy are probably one and the same, to be honest with you. Counselling tends to focus on day-to-day challenges that may be occurring right now. And psychotherapy tends to focus on our backgrounds, maybe our history or our kind of younger life, for example. But for me, if I'm honest, it's all interchangeable. It's likely that someone will present to me with a particular challenge or issue, and there's a chance that it comes from childhood, that it comes from something that's happened within an earlier stage of their life, basically. And yeah, the approach is the same for me, if I'm perfectly honest with you. But as I say, the diploma feels the need to distinguish between both. I would probably call myself a counsellor rather than a psychotherapist. I don't know. There's a connotation. I think counsellor feels more accessible, but purely because it's on my certificate, I felt the need to say both. That's the hands up. That's the only reason why.
But it may be something that someone's looking for.
Absolutely,
and I think that is the best thing. You're not putting yourself in. You're not putting your eggs into one basket. It's a great wee saying there.
Yeah.
I can't thank you enough for coming on.
Thank you so
your
much.
knowledge is just absolutely amazing. Everything that you've discussed, and think as well, like you're such a nice, calming person. You've got such a nice energy about you. And I think anybody that, as we say, like mental health is such a big thing at the moment. And I think if you are considering going for counselling, then you should. If you're considering it, I think you should, regardless, because there's something in your mind that your conscience is telling you that you need this. So I think that kind of leads us on to, how do we find you, Tracey? Where do we find you? Do we find you? What's your socials? Do you have a website? Let us know.
Okay, so I'm in the process of building a website. And as a person who's not drastically technical, that's loads of fun, as you can imagine. So I'm in the process of building a website where you can book through the website, etc., which is fantastic if I can get it working. And I'm mostly on Instagram. I do have a Facebook page, but Instagram is kind of typically, I think it's a friendly platform. I really like it as a platform. And I'm One of a Kind Counselling on Instagram is probably the easiest place to find me. I have business cards dotted about all over the place and flyers anywhere that there's a community notice board that has my telephone number. But I'm based from this office, obviously, at Startup Street in Renfrew. So that's also another avenue in which you can access me.
That's amazing. So there you go. Startup Street in Renfrew is where it's happening.
Yes, it is.
Definitely. And we'll have a few more of the tenants are in here as well, discussing their business, because I do believe that everybody in here deserves a chance to shine and to get out to the people of Renfrewshire and the surrounding areas. Thank you so much for coming on. I thoroughly enjoyed my time. Likewise. And I hope you have as well.
I loved it.
If you are listening to the podcast, whether it be on YouTube or Spotify or Apple Podcast, or just generally wherever you get your podcasts from, YouTube, leave us a like and a subscribe. Please share the video also, because it just helps people like Tracey and their business get out there to everyone, regardless of where you live. Spotify, Apple, you can leave reviews. Let us know what you're thinking of the podcast. You can certainly leave 5 stars. I feel like this episode deserves 5 stars. I thought it was been brilliant. But again, just thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And we will see you again in the next one, folks. Thanks very much and take care.